You're listening to Hockey Talk on the Rock
Alright, stop!
with Lara and Keith.
It's interesting.
So let's back up a second.
He played absolutely out of his mind.
It made no sense to me.
And now, here are your hosts.
All right, we're back.
Welcome back, Hockey Talk on the Rock. It's a relatively quiet week for hockey news, but still some stuff to go over. A few significant signings happened over the past week.
Yep, excited to be back. Episode number 8.
Yeah.
So we're trucking along here.
Getting all the content.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've got a lot to talk about despite the slow news week like you mentioned, but we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. So I guess starting things off, there's been a few signings in the league over the past week, and I think the big one, at least headline-wise, was Joe Thornton signing in his hometown Toronto, home province Toronto, I guess. And it's an interesting move. I understand where the Leafs are coming from. I think in some ways it's a smart move because he'll have obviously a big influence in that locker room. But I do think the trio of him, Spezza, and Simmons is interesting. Just because of their speed and their age.
The lack thereof.
Yes.
Speed, yeah.
And I think, again, Dubas has been smart in revamping the team, again, getting more character guys, and everyone's trying to compare them right now to Tampa with, retooling their character guys, but keeping their core. But I mean, the retooling that Tampa did is a little bit different than this.
It was much more significant, and they paid a bigger price for sure.
Yeah. So it'll be very interesting to see how that works out for Toronto. I think with 700,000 league minimum, it's pretty low risk. So, yeah, I really want to see what their bottom 6 lineups are going to look like.
Me too, I agree. I like the signing. I really like Jumbo Joe.
Yeah.
He needs to win a cup, he says.
Yeah.
I don't know that Toronto's that team this year, but, we'll see. And like you just said, the bottom 6, I was wondering today who's going to be the centerman? Is Spencer going to slide over the wing or Kerfoot? Like, you got to say Jumbo Joe's going to be a centerman. Yeah.
I would guess that he's going to be the third line center to start, and they'll slide Kerfoot to the wing. That's just a guess.
That's kind of what I was thinking too, because Spencer seems pretty cemented in that fourth
line center role. Yeah, again, I think in terms of locker room moves, really smart. And I also really like Joe Thornton, so it'll be interesting to see how it goes. And yeah, I mean, on the power play there, like if he plays on the second line power play, he can dish the puck as well as anyone still, right? If he has time. So. Yeah, so that was the big one. And there was a couple kind of more minor signings. The first was that Dadonov signed in Ottawa. A little bit of a confusing location choice, but I think for Ottawa it does cement their top 6, or not necessarily cement, because I still think that second line's a bit iffy, but the top line now, if you have Tkachuk and then Dadonov on the wings, I still don't know who the first line center is going to be. Cherney?
I think it was Tierney.
Yeah. And that's a decent top line. I would say it's a decent top 2 lines, maybe.
Yeah.
But Ottawa should be a bit better next year. I have questions, obviously, about their defense, but I think, again, for Ottawa, it's a low-risk signing, a good term, good money, so good for them.
Yeah, no, I agree. When I first heard the news break or whatever, I was like, why would he go to Ottawa, But I even read the little blurb they put out today and talking to him directly about why, and it just more or less seemed like, well, he got a decent contract based on what else was being offered to all the other players. He's only, what we talk about now, the 6th or 7th contract that's 3 or more years.
Yeah.
And he said it directly, like he's going to be the top line winger, and he's going to be on the top power play, and he's going to get a real good opportunity too.
And you look at like what Duclair did there last year, for example, and Dadonov is not as much of he's not a project, so he could score a bunch of points if he's given that opportunity for sure.
Yeah, you think he will get it too.
Yeah, and then I'm also interested with Ottawa if they add another top 6 winger, like maybe they do re-sign Duclair, maybe they get Hoffman back, which would be really interesting.
I thought about that earlier. I don't think he's going to go back there.
I doubt it, but it would be interesting if all of a sudden that top 6 is a lot better, right?
Right.
But yeah, a decent move for Ottawa. I think decent move for Dadonov. Overall, kind of meh.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the kind of WTF signing was Cody Ceci to Pittsburgh for me. I don't understand what Pittsburgh is doing with their defense. I know they said they wanted to revamp it, but so far they've added Matheson and Ceci.
And they got rid of Schultz, Mata, and who's it? Jack Johnson.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think it's kind of gotten a little bit worse.
Yeah.
But
anyway,
they know what they're doing?
We'll see.
Question mark?
So that was the one that kind of got me, but I guess good for Cody Ceci to get into the league again.
Sure.
And then kind of moving into the re-signings, there's a bunch of both free agents for next year and then RFAs that signed this week. The first one was Brendan Gallagher in Montreal, and that was interesting because the day before he signed, it came out that they were having all sorts of issues and it was breaking down. Yeah. And then the next day they signed a 6-year deal.
So 24 hours of availability.
Yeah.
You know, the offers must have been pretty weak.
And I know that Bergevin in his conference afterwards was almost crying about how much he liked Gallagher. And I don't know, it's just very interesting turn of events over 24 hours.
Right.
But I guess they realized they really needed him. So
I guess so. I mean, I was surprised at both the length of the contract and the money.
Yeah, I was, but I'm also not. Like, Brendan Gallagher, I think over the past 3 or 4 years has scored in the top 4 or 5 amount of goals in the league. It's some weird underrated stat, and just because he's so much the heartbeat of that team, I get it from Montreal's perspective. I was listening a bit today about how their prospects, when they're asked like who do you want to play like, they all say Brendan Gallagher.
Right. So
if you have that, I guess you want to keep that.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, the money wasn't so much surprising to me. It was more about the term because he's, going to be 29 at the end of his current contract. Yeah. And 6 years is a while, and he plays a hard game. Yeah. And we've seen that with Kessler and guys like that where they're really high end skill, but they play that hard game. And yeah. I don't know if he's going to last that
I'd be surprised if he lasts the whole thing. I think it's going to end up LTIR, but yeah, I understand why he wanted it, and evidently when Anderson signed the deal in Montreal, he was pissed off because he was saying, well, where's my money? And I thought that was going to be my term. Yeah. So I think that's why. And
all of a sudden, Toffoli, another winger, got in there too. And, yeah.
So yeah, that was the first kind of signing. The other one that I was going to ask you about was Nolan Patrick in Philadelphia, re-ups 1 year, I think $850K, something around then, low risk signing.
He didn't even play last year. I texted a friend. We live in a world where Nolan Patrick gets paid more than Jumbo Joe Thornton. It's kind of weird to think about.
That is weird,
considering he definitely didn't play last year.
Yeah.
I hope he turns out. I hope it's like if I want it to be like when Crosby looked like he was done, but it turned out it was his neck and not his head, and he came back. And I hope it's something like that with Nolan Patrick. He could be a really good player, but I don't have my hopes up.
Yeah, I really hope for his sake that he gets into some games this year, at least a few, and that even if he's just like a regular player for them and isn't exceptional, that's like the best case scenario right now, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, he's still so young.
Yeah.
It's too bad, really, but yeah.
Yeah, and then moving in the division, I guess, New York re-signs a couple of their RFAs. They re-signed their backup goalie, Gorgia.
Yeah, okay.
And then they also re-upped Tony DeAngelo. So a little bit of a questionable cap hit, but I understand it on one hand because it's the points thing. He puts up points, and that people that put up points get paid. Yeah. It's the defensive abilities of Tony DeAngelo that are questionable. And 2 years, it's just under $5 million. So, I mean, it's not horrible, but it's not great. And then again, you look at them signing Jack Johnson, and there's a couple guys on that like defensive group now that their defensive abilities are
questionable at best.
At best, yeah.
Yeah, no, I was thinking that too. He is pretty bad in his own zone. I watch a lot of the Rangers, unfortunately. Hate the Rangers. And no, he's bad. In the bubble especially, he was very terrible. Like, he got exposed pretty badly in that Carolina series. Yeah. And, I made a couple comparables to, like, and sad to admit for me, the way he compares like to Shane Gostisbehere.
A bit, yeah.
He was 4th in the league. D'Angelo was in defense scoring this past year, and Gostisbehere was 4th in 2 years ago, and he's fallen because he got exposed so badly in his own end. And also Justin Schultz, 3 years ago, was 8th in the league in points, but the same thing, just the bad habits of the back end and defensive liability. So I thought he got too much money, but we'll see. He'll,
the term
like you say,
is fine.
he'll probably get a bunch of points.
Yeah. And then I guess within the Canucks, if we want to go there next, we had a couple a signing and a re-signing. So Jace Howerluck signed to the Canucks. Yeah, he's on a 2-way deal, so might play in the AHL, might play in the NHL. I can see him fitting nicely into the Canucks bottom 6, and it's almost like a perfect bottom 6 contract for the Canucks.
Yeah.
If you think about a 4th line with either him and Mott and Beagle, or him and McEwen and Beagle, you know, suddenly Howerluck is a guy that plays one of those styles of games that people don't like to play against, which is nice for the Canucks because I didn't think they had enough of that in their lineup.
Yeah.
And so now maybe you can move on from Roussel too, if you can take someone to take on that contract.
Right.
It's not horrible, but it is something. And yeah, I think that was a smart move for the Canucks.
Yeah, no, I heard them talking about this Howerluck guy a couple of weeks ago when TSN 1040 reported they heard the Canucks were kicking tires, and I think it was Drance was talking about how he was with Florida when they drafted him. Yeah. And he was really, really high on him, and he said, he's one of those players that people hate to play against, and if he can just, it's like a lot of players, if he can pick up his skating, he's got a lot of offense to show too. Yeah. So it's kind of intriguing and kind of neat that, over a couple of weeks you see it kind of develop and they do sign him. Yep. So that could be, like you say, a good value pickup.
Good value pickup, I think, for the bottom 6, which is something the Canucks have needed for a long time. Mm-hmm. And then they also re-signed Gaudette to a 1-year deal.
Hockey God.
Hockey God's back with the Sellies. And that's, I like Hockey God. I think that's a good, I think it was 850 as well, okay, for Gaudette.
I got 900.
900? Okay, that makes sense. And that's decent, just under $1 million for him. And again, as you said in a previous episode, we still don't really know what Gaudette is. And with the Canucks right now in their current cap situation, they now have under $1 million in cap space. So that's not necessarily the end of the world, because you look at Michael Furland, he's probably going to go on LTIR. Yeah. So that frees up, $3.5 million, basically to sign Virtanen. And they'll get him for under $3.5 million. So that's not bad, but you still think they might want to move some money out. They're definitely probably, unless they move money out, they're not going to be signing anyone else. So your top 6 now is either going to have Virtanen in it, and then the other question mark for me would be is if Gaudette could somehow play on the wing.
Right.
But I don't know if Gaudette at this stage is any better defensively than Virtanen. So...
What about Tyler Mott?
I really like the idea of Tyler Mott playing in the top 6, and it might just be recency bias from his series or his 2 series in the playoffs, really. But I guess it depends on what you want Bo Horvat's line to be, and that's kind of what it comes down to. Because Horvat can be your shutdown center. Right. You can play him against your top line. He has offensive abilities, and he can definitely put the puck in the net. If you, to me, Tyler Mott on that line makes a lot more sense than Louis Eriksson. Right. Because he can at least do something. Right. Jake Virtanen, he takes away from their defensive abilities, but he can put the puck in the net. Right. And I think Gaudette would kind of be the same. But if you have Horvat as your shutdown line, maybe you can then build a more offensive third line with Gaudette as the center, and it doesn't matter as much how his defensive instincts are. But again, way too early really to talk about it. Yeah. But it's just a
quick aside, that the Howerluck contract was a 2-way contract too. So that, did you mention that?
I didn't. Sorry.
Okay.
But yes, he'll make lower money or less money if he plays in the AHL.
And it makes it easier for them to move him between leagues because of that, right? Yeah. Okay.
So I think that's all my news.
That's all your news?
Anything else?
Yeah, I definally did. I had a few. I didn't jump in quick enough when we were talking about signings and re-signings or whatever. Sorry. So Patrick Marleau signing in San Jose for 1 more year at league minimum, I only thought was worth noting because he truly has the potential to pass the all-time game played record, which I thought was notable.
Yep.
He's in 4th right now, and I think it's 10 games. He moves to 3rd, and 20 into 4 or 2nd. And
it's not that many into 1st.
I think it's 42.
Yeah, so
I'll have to look that up. But
yeah, no.
It's a substantial thing, and they debated it on 1040. I don't know if you heard of, is Marleau a Hall of Famer?
Right, yeah.
Not a Hall of Famer kind of thing.
Yeah.
Quickly, I would say no.
Yeah, it's, to me, he's had a very good career, but he's just missing the NHL awards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
And
what they say, he crested 80 points once kind of thing.
The longevity thing is very impressive, and then...
And he should be honored and respected through San Jose for it, but not maybe the Hall, right?
Yep.
Aaron Dell signed in Toronto as the 3rd goalie.
Yep.
Dubas was saying their strongest 1-2-3 goalie punch ever. Maybe he's right. It's gonna be condensed schedule. We all know that.
Yeah,
so.
I think that's smart. Again, I think the idea of having a 3rd goalie this year that can play is one that a bunch of teams are gonna roll with, and yeah, Aaron Dell has played NHL games. He can step in if one of them gets injured, and maybe.
Well, yeah, and we'll see, right? Like myself, I almost would think Dell might have a good chance to get in the 2nd over Jack Campbell.
Yeah, no, it's true.
Montreal extended Jake Allen.
Yes.
For 2 years at 2.875. Well, I think it's because of the expansion draft.
Yeah.
Right? I think they have to, because they're protecting the price, exposure. They have to have an exposed goalie. And if they don't take him, they got Allen at 2.875 for 2 more years.
It's not bad.
Not bad. And especially like we talked about when we talked about the trade.
Yep.
It sounds like he's just a consummate professional and, exceptional teammate. So
I think he's only 30 right now too.
Right.
He's either 29 or 30, so he won't be that old when that contract expires, especially for a goalie. So yeah, it makes sense. Again, for the expansion draft, definitely. But yeah, if Seattle wants to take him or not, it's not really that big of a risk.
Right. No, it was smart.
Yeah.
What else did we talk about? We talked about, there was Calgary re-signed Mangiapane.
Yeah.
I haven't watched a lot of Calgary. Apparently he's great.
They've been really high on Mangiapane. I've watched a bit of Calgary, not a lot. I mean, they play in the same division as the Canucks, so, here and there. I don't know what his potential is, really, so we'll see, but it's interesting. I knew he was going to get paid because people were so high on him. But
yeah, and I mean, I kind of put him on this list, too, because I was confused, because he was listed as a UFA when he re-signed, and he's an RFA.
Yeah, definitely. But
when I saw UFA, I was like, oh, that's kind of weird that he waited to sign back with Calgary after, I wonder, maybe he got no offers.
Yeah.
So then I figured it out and realized I was just being a dummy. But...
and that is something else that is going to be interesting here, because there's a bunch of UFAs out there that have waited, and I feel like they've almost waited too long.
A little bit.
Yeah.
This has gone really quiet.
Yeah, you look at Mike Hoffman, you look at the Anthony Declares, you look at, the Sammy Vatanens. Like, these are all guys that I'm sure got some sort of offer from someone, but they probably wanted more, and I don't know how long you can wait in this economy.
Totally. I mean, and it bodes well for people, maybe the Canucks with a little 1 year thing on Hamonic or something like that. I mean, high hopes, but
other than that, I guess the big news is that Winnipeg is evidently still shopping Patrick Laine.
I did have stuff on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So what? He's upset.
He's upset. He wants to move on. He's kind of whiny.
He wants out. Confidence, consistency issues. He's only 22, right?
I just think for Winnipeg's sake, if they move him this year, it's kind of dumb.
Yeah.
Like, keep him for the year and then move on from him, because they're probably not going to be able to afford to re-sign him anyway. But you brought in Stastny really to play with Laine and Ehlers.
Yeah.
Let it see how it goes.
Build the value.
Build his value, and then trade him. Because at this stage, like, you're selling so low.
Well, yeah, you got to get a good package that makes Winnipeg a better team.
Yeah.
And, no one's probably offering as much as what he's worth.
And that Patrick Laine is going to be at least a 40, if not 50 goal scorer in the league. And Yeah, I just think if they give up on him right now, it's not smart.
Yeah, no, I agree. They've been talking about a couple potential trade partners
Yes.
for Winnipeg, though, just for the fun of it.
Yes.
So I'll throw a couple things at you.
Yeah.
They were talking about Florida as a landing spot.
Right.
If you were the Florida GM,
Yeah.
would you trade Aaron Ekblad for Patrick Laine?
Yes.
Okay.
Just yes.
Straight up.
I think, I think they'd have to give more.
Florida would.
I think Florida would,
Yeah.
and I think it's just the cost of goals.
That's what I've got to. No, I would say no, but if Florida put in more.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Islanders, they were talking about Matthew Barzal
Right.
for Patrick Laine.
That one I would go no from New York.
I would go, if I was Winnipeg, I said yep in a heartbeat.
Exactly, yeah.
For Matthew Barzal.
Yeah.
So I couldn't really see it. I couldn't see it. Barzal's a far better player.
Yeah.
Columbus, Werenski plus.
Okay, so I have that actually in my would you rather section.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll skip
But
that.
we'll skip that. We'll come back to it.
And then Carolina, one of their top D
Yeah.
plus.
Again, I say for Carolina, yeah, like if you can get Patrick Laine into that lineup, you do it.
Okay.
And because they've got such a decent defensive core that it wouldn't matter as much to them.
Right.
And you have the Finnish guys up front. You have Aho anyway to kind of play with, and you think about a line of like Aho, Laine, and Svechnikov, that would be pretty sick.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it's going to segue me into a second portion of this Laine thing because I got Philly
Right.
as one of the potential blah, blah, blahs here, right? So, you know, as we talked about before, they would obviously hope Augustus Bear plus a Scott Laughton prospect and a pick, blah, blah, blah. It's not going to happen because Augustus Bear's value is
It's too low.
It's way too low. It'd have to be Myers or Sanheim, and they can't do it. But moving off of the Laine,
Yeah.
because like we've concluded he's not going to get traded this year.
Yeah.
We'll kick it down the can until he does. I got my Team North America jersey on for Shane Goss's Bear right now.
Yes.
That was an awesome team.
That was
it's a sweet jersey.
Pretty fun.
Yeah, right? So based on that, I want to throw at you, I'll be Philly's GM,
Yes.
right? And they've been saying that Ghost to Bear is
on the market.
on the market, and there's 3 teams kicking tires.
Okay.
So you're the GM of these 3 teams.
Okay.
And I'll either throw out like a starting point,
Okay.
you know, and I'm going to be like, you know, we'll get this deal done. We'll be up into the middle of the morning.
Okay.
And then, you know, we'll work it out. So
Yeah.
if I'm the Philly GM and I come to you and you're Winnipeg and I say, okay, so I'm trading Shane Goss's Bear to you.
Okay.
And Ehlers is coming back. And
Right.
we're going to make this happen. What makes it happen?
I would say either a prospect or a pick.
It would only be like a high pick, like a
Yeah.
first?
I mean, I don't know if Philly does it for a first, but I think, like, ideally for Winnipeg, yes, but maybe a second.
So you think Ghosty in a second would get Ehlers?
I think Ehlers in Winnipeg isn't working.
Right.
And I think teams know that too. And it's almost, again, like a similar situation where you're going to sell low on a player, though he did have a decent playoffs this year. Like, personally, he was fine. Maybe a roster player as well, but I don't think it's going to cost as much as you think. And because Winnipeg is so desperate for defense specifically,
Right.
I think that it could happen.
Okay. I would do it if it was
Yeah.
Ghost in a second. But anyways, so the next team would be Florida.
Right.
So let's say I'm sending Ghost's Bear to you.
Yes.
Carte blanche. No centerpiece. What would have to make it work? Because I couldn't think of who they would send back.
I'm trying to think of who's on Florida now. I mean, it's obviously not going to be one of their top players, right?
No.
So it's not going to be Huberdeau. It's not going to be Ekblad. It's not going to be...
It would be a winger,
It will be a winger, and they don't have Hoffman. They don't have Dadonov anymore.
So who are their wingers?
That's the question. Who are their wingers?
It's not Barkov.
It's obviously not Barkov. Who are their
That would be a
wingers?
tough one, right?
Yeah.
I tried to throw it to you because I was like, I don't know.
I don't know.
Pick some prospects.
I guess some prospects, yeah.
Okay, and then Toronto.
Toronto.
Nylander is the focal point.
Okay,
Ghosty Bear plus.
I don't know what gets you Nylander for with
It would be a
with
lot
Ghost
more than
in there.
Ehlers, is what you're telling me.
You want it to be Nylander. I would say it's definitely going to be a first. I'd say a first, a prospect.
And Ghost would get it done. That's a high price, but I think I'd probably do that.
Yeah.
All right. That was my little GM situation.
Your little
for
GM
you.
section,
Yeah.
My last little kind of talking point, I guess, before we get into our kind of game, is the rumors around the NHL with having an all-Canadian division.
Right. Bill Foley dropped that in an interview, and it made everyone think that this is happening.
Yes.
And it makes sense.
It makes sense, especially, global situation. I really don't see how travel back and across the border is going to be happening in January, if that's when the NHL season starts. So at least to have, your first couple months where you only play in the division maybe set up, and then they try to negotiate where they can travel to the US, they do their quarantine when they come back or whatever.
Yeah.
I think it makes sense. For a Canucks team perspective, I think it kind of sucks because that division is going to be pretty tough. Like, you think, okay, Ottawa's at the bottom, and I would say probably right now Toronto's at the top, but it's debatable to me. And then you have, Winnipeg, Calgary, Vancouver, Edmonton. Montreal. And Montreal's improved quite a bit.
Yeah.
I don't really know how much separates those 5 teams.
I think it'll be good.
It'll be good.
I think it'll be good.
It'll be a lot of hate.
Say Ottawa would be in the bottom dweller, and I think the other 6 would all be
pretty
good
close.
Games.
Yeah.
I think they'd be great. I think it'd be good for Canada intense rivalries.
Oh yeah. I'm happy I no longer live in Alberta.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, no, I mean that would be fun. What do you have something else to move on to, or are you waiting for your hot takes?
I'm waiting for the hot takes. I think I do have one other kind of little thought, which was just coming back to Vegas, and I guess it will connect into the Schmidt trade because I know you wanted to add a bit more.
Yeah, a little bit
too.
We just broke it basically.
Yeah. So in the past, week and a half, the Vegas Golden Knights have signed Alex Pietrangelo, and they have traded away Nate Schmidt and Paul Stastny.
Yeah.
And you look at their team, and there's no one really, unless I guess they're hoping for Glass to come in and take that second line center spot, which I don't really think is realistic for him. But there isn't really anyone on that team right now who can play a second line center.
Because they traded Eakin.
And they traded Eakin last year
deadline,
too, yeah. So you got a big hole. They're pretty weak now down the middle. I mean, I don't think Chandler Stevenson's going to come up and play anything above fourth line center. So it's just an interesting move, and I don't think there's any way they're as good as they were this year as they were last year.
No, yeah.
You also talk about the team identity from when they moved to Vegas was really meant to be this group of guys that were like, we were given up on, and we're going to play to our full potential, and
no
blah,
one
blah,
wanted
blah, blah.
us.
No one wanted us, yeah.
Now they've traded for a bunch of people and signed for highly coveted free agents.
It's almost like an all-star team.
And so, yeah.
What is their identity?
Exactly.
And then Nate Schmidt was, like a really glue locker room guy, like kind of the identity of Vegas. He was very well liked. He was there from the beginning, and he's gone. Mm-hmm. And really, the Canucks got him for nothing.
Oh yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, it's amazing that they've sacrificed a lot to make these, like Robin Laine, Pietrangelo, Pacioretty, make these big splashes. And moving on to what you were saying there, Schmidt and the Vancouver trade. He was good in Washington, and being a Philly fan, I got to see them play quite a bit, obviously, and he was good. But I'll never forget. I can't remember when they were playing, but he was doing an interview, and it was it was early in the season, or right before the season started, or whatever. And they were talking about how he got picked, and if he was upset about it, and he was you could see he was a mix of upset and fired right up because he was Washington told me they really wanted to keep me.
Right.
But then they didn't protect me.
Yeah.
And he and it seemed like it really hurt
Set
the guy.
a fire inside
and if you look at his stat line, that first year in Vegas, he had a career high in goals, assists, points, plus minus. It was a great year for him, and he's basically stayed at that rate with Vegas since then.
Right.
So, in my heart of hearts, as a Canucks fan, well, no, I'm just hoping that it's a similar thing, right? He was so much of you say that culture in Vegas that he will likely, hopefully, look at this and be like, I brought so much to that team, and they just traded me for basically nothing.
Yeah.
And I'm going to show them because they're in my division.
Right.
Right.
And the other thing, kind of with all of that Vegas stuff, is there are rumors that they were hot in on getting Stamkos.
Oh yeah.
And Stamkos was okay with going to Vegas because, for one reason, he'll still pay essentially no taxes.
Right.
It's the same as Florida.
Yeah.
And they're obviously a decent team, and then that would be your first or second line center for Vegas, right? I have no idea how they could possibly ever make that work.
No.
But evidently they were there, so it's just one of those things. Like they just want to add. They want to add those superstars.
They got that taste, the cup final that first year, and they're really just going overboard.
Yeah.
Well, it'll cost them.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we've talked about a ton of things, but, I did want to get into a quick, as a Vancouver fan,
Yes.
doesn't have to be in a necessary proper order.
Yes.
Who would be your most despised opponents in the NHL?
Okay, well, Edmonton and Calgary are like the first two that come to my mind. And then obviously Boston, because of Boston. I think Vegas has crept into that conversation after the playoffs this year. And for me, I just will always hate Chicago, but that's a personal thing. I feel like now it's probably cooled down a bit. Who else is there that I don't like? I don't like LA still.
You can't pare it down to 3, though?
To 3?
Yeah.
Well, okay, I'd say Edmonton's my least favorite team in the NHL right now.
Okay.
So I'll say Edmonton, I'll say Boston. And Boston is probably just because of Marchand at this point.
Yeah.
And then...
I feel like you want to say Chicago.
It's not, though. I feel like it's
Calgary.
either Calgary or Vegas, to be honest. They're close. Yeah.
I feel you.
Yeah.
All right. Mine would be the Rangers.
Yes.
Number 1, like way up here, and then Calgary and Vegas would fall behind them.
Right. Yeah.
I used to always call myself an ABC fan, anybody but Calgary.
Yeah.
And I just hated them forever, and Edmonton.
Yeah.
And I don't, I think since the Gimla Kiprasov's era kind of died off, and the Flames have never been that great anymore.
Yeah, that's
it's
the
died
thing,
off a little bit. And I mean, Edmonton I used to really hate.
Yeah.
And then especially after getting all those first overall picks, I really hated them. But since they really haven't been able to be a good team with all that luck, I just I almost feel bad. So I don't hate them anymore.
I think that my hatred for both Edmonton and Calgary do come from my Alberta living days, I will say. It's just too much exposure and too much hate coming from the other teams. But yeah, it's an interesting one for sure. I feel like the Canucks are lacking that really strong rivalry right now.
That makes me so excited for Seattle.
Yeah.
It really does. I think it'll be a great thing right off the bat.
Yeah.
On Canucks fandom, I do
Yes.
have one would you rather for you.
Okay, sounds good.
If the Canucks ceased to exist,
Yeah.
never existed, or maybe just came to a crashing halt,
Yeah.
and you were forced, had to be a lifelong, die-hard fan
Yes.
of the Blue Jackets or the Coyotes, who would it be and why?
That's awful. I think it has to be the Blue Jackets. It's very borderline, and the only reason why I say that is because they haven't had as dysfunctional a history outside of hockey as Arizona.
Okay.
But in terms of the team, neither of them have had really... I mean, Arizona's had more success, I guess, playoff-wise overall, but neither of them have ever really had that much success, and both of them have kind of always played a pretty boring style of hockey. But you look at Columbus, and they at least had, Rick Nash. He scored some goals. They have, a couple, they have, obviously, their good defense right now, and then Pierre-Luc Dubois is a decent player. If they got Patrick Laine, that would make things more exciting. But anyway, yeah.
Columbus it is, okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to throw that past you because I thought to myself, those would be the two teams I'd probably at least want to be a fan of.
Yeah. I think Minnesota's got to be in there for me, too.
Okay.
Just because of how boring, or Florida. Those are kind of the four, I don't know, teams that I would not want to cheer for.
Right. I would have picked Columbus below Arizona myself.
Okay.
Mainly because I think the Blue Jackets is the dumbest name in hockey.
It is. I agree with that. And the logo, I don't like.
And the logo
either.
I hate. And because they're in the Flyers division, I watch them often. And then the cannon. Do you know what I'm talking about? Every time they score, they have that stupid cannon, and it drives me insane. So I couldn't be a Columbus fan.
Okay, fair enough. I understand.
Yeah.
It would be hard.
It would be hard.
Okay.
That was the last of my everything that I've got.
Okay, do you want to do the would you rathers first?
Sure. Yeah, let's do that.
So I'll start off with an easy one. We just kind of talked about it. So for the upcoming NHL season, would you rather have an all-Canadian division or the Canucks play in the Pacific Division? This is from a Canucks standpoint. And I basically am saying in terms of, success versus entertainment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Success, Pacific.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
If it was like no guidelines, I think I would want to go for the Canadian because I think it would be entertaining.
Yeah.
But yeah, success for sure, Pacific. Yeah. I think so.
I think so as well. I think particularly with the three California teams in the Pacific and then Arizona right now, there's some weaker teams that you can see the Canucks are better than.
Yeah.
Whereas with the Canadian division, I find it really hard to rank where teams are. I think they're all kind of mushed together besides Ottawa, as we said. But I think just for the once-in-a-lifetime thing, I'm kind of hoping that it is Canadian.
Yeah.
And that, we'll see what happens. Okay, so my second one is would you rather have Patrick Laine or Zach Werenski?
Patrick Laine.
Yeah, me too. That's pretty easy. And
I undervalue Werenski big time, though.
Yeah. I mean, I think for Winnipeg's perspective, if they could get Zach Werenski in that deal, that really does shore up at least their number one pair defense with Morrissey. It's pretty decent.
Mm-hmm.
And they have right now star power up front where they can still score.
Right.
So I think for them it would make some sense. And he's young. That's the other thing too. Whereas if they trade, Ekblad's still quite young too. He just seems older to me. But yeah, anyway, I think there's some room there. To me, Columbus makes the most sense for Patrick Laine destination, but we'll see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, third, would you rather? Would you rather have Cody Ceci, Jack Johnson, or Eric Gabranson on your defensive
That's
score?
terrible.
I know. You have to pick one.
I don't know. They're all slow and they're all bad. I don't know. Can I base my answer on their contracts right now?
Sure, yeah.
I don't know. I guess Jack Johnson because he costs the least amount.
Yeah. I also don't really know. I feel like they're all almost the same player, to be honest.
Yeah.
I'll say Cody Ceci because he is the youngest and, might have some chance to redeem himself. You look at a Luke Shen, things can happen, whereas the other two, I think there's no way.
Okay.
But, yeah, it's terrible. Okay, this is a Canucks would you rather. Would you rather have the Canucks trade an asset to get rid of Cap and then sign either Hoffman or Hamonic on the blue line, so one of the two, or keep your assets and then give Virtanen and either Rathbone or Rafferty a chance?
I'd keep the assets for this year.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think it would be tempting to start getting a little more loosey-goosey with the assets because of how much you're not going to be able to scout properly anymore, and you're not going to get as many games out of prospects anymore, and talent evaluation I think is going to be a lot more difficult, so the draft is going to be a lot more of a crapshoot.
Right, that makes sense. Yeah, I kind of would rather them get rid of cap space, and the reason why is because I think the Canucks are in a position where they've now, they've built their team around kind of their main prospects. There's a couple, I think if you were going to give up on Hoglander, for example, I'd be pissed off.
Right.
But I think you have room to kind of play around a bit. And, PD and Hughes now are on their last year of their entry deal. I think this is actually a really good time if you could get cap space to make your team better.
Right.
And especially if you could sign those guys to short-term deals where, maybe you just go all in this year and see how well, because who knows how good any team is going to be, right?
Yep.
And anyway, we'll see. That was that one. And then my last would you rather
Okay.
is right now, if you had to start being a fan of either Washington or Pittsburgh, who would you cheer for? It's basically who would you think has a better chance to win another Stanley Cup, Washington or Pittsburgh?
Oh, okay. When you put it like that,
Yeah.
I would go with the Capitals only because I feel like they have more certainty in their young up and coming goaltender,
Right.
and I think the goalie will play a bigger factor.
Right. Yeah, I don't actually know. I feel like both these teams are about to go really into the decline.
Yeah.
If Washington was to win again, I think it has to be next year. Like, I don't think they can do it after that.
Right.
Just with how old their core is getting. And yeah, I think it's pretty tough. I don't.
But Backstrom just signed for like
I
7
know.
more years.
I don't get it. But I don't see how Pittsburgh wins with their defense. I think Pittsburgh is honestly going to be kind of on the verge of making the playoffs this year, depending on how things go.
Yeah.
Just based on what they've done defensively,
I could
get
easily
it.
see them outside the playoffs this
Yeah.
year.
Okay, so I'm going to move into the next section.
Final section.
Yeah, the final
the
section.
final countdown.
The final countdown. So I have 10 hot takes, which are kind of bold predictions for the upcoming year.
All right, let's rapid fire. Here
Yeah.
we go.
Okay,
Number
1. Jake Virtanen will score more goals than Tyler Toffoli.
1. Woo! Okay, I'd probably take that bet.
Okay.
Let's go.
Okay. Number 2. Both disappointing rookies from last season, Jack Hughes and Capo Caco, will both have monster second years. I have Caco's going to score 20 goals, and Hughes is going to get 50 points.
Monster years.
Monster years. Well, compared to their rookie years,
Okay,
right? I was
sure.
trying to be somewhat realistic while still being a large increase.
Yeah, no, I'll go with you on that one.
Yeah. Okay. Number 3. This is a Canucks hot take.
Okay.
Okay, Braden Holtby is going to start more games than Thatcher Demko next season.
I'd put my money on that too.
Okay, there we go. Number 4, this is a pretty low-level hot take. It is that Nate McKinnon is going to win both the Art Ross and the Hart Trophy next season.
I like that.
Yeah,
I can see the heart.
yeah. And then number 5, I have that the Boston Bruins are going to finish below both the Leafs and the Habs in the standings.
Ooh.
And this might be me hoping, but I think the Bruins have gotten worse. Both those teams have gotten better. Who knows at this stage?
I'd be happy to see it.
Number 6, one of Quinn Hughes or Cale Makar will finish top 3 in Norris Trophy voting next year.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Number 7, Arizona is going to finish last in the Western Conference.
Whoa, that's a pretty big one.
It is a big one. The obvious kind of
Makes
caveat
sense.
with that is
Search
their goaltender,
Yeah.
and it's kind of dependent on them trading their goaltender because otherwise I don't see it happening.
Yeah.
But there's so much issues with Arizona right now. I just think they're a team that's gonna blaze out. Anyway, number 8. This is my happy Canucks one. Pettersson is gonna finish top 10 in league scoring this year.
Nice.
I think it's gonna be his big breakout year. This one.
Okay.
And number 9 is that the Leafs are going to win at least one playoff round, pretty low level. They got to do it at some point,
They got to
right?
do it at some point. I'll give you that one.
And then number 10 is even though they say the NHL is going to start on January 1st, the season won't start until February 1st.
Okay.
Yeah.
A very specific hot take there.
I don't know. I just
Okay.
thought it'll be a month delayed. They're saying January 1st right now, but time's running out.
Yeah, I hope you're wrong, but we'll see. Clip it.
Clip it. Yeah, all the hot takes. Anyway.
All right, well, that was a good talk.
Yeah, good times.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
Yeah.
We'll be back when there's more to talk about.
For sure. Peace.